Hi everyone, and welcome to the English Hour. In today's episode, we'll talk about prep schools or English prep classes, and it's something that is very dear to my heart because I work with a lot of prep class students, and therefore I get to see what they experience, what they suffer from, what they have difficulties with, and so on. And I get to work with a lot of students from various universities, and it's a really interesting experience, and there are certain things that I'm not very happy about related to the current conditions of the prep schools, and today we'll try to talk about the prep school experience. So Canberk, do you have any idea about prep classes?
Well, hi guys. Prep classes can be difficult. For example, Boğaziçi University, where we graduated from, Kilios is the place where prep classes are held for the majority of the students. And Kilios is 1.5 hour drive from the actual Boğaziçi University campus, which means students are completely removed from the cultural experience of being a university student when they are at the prep school. Another major disadvantage is we are not very happy. I mean, let's say we're not fans of the level of education, the quality of education that they're getting, even though we have no problem with the actual teachers, the educators themselves. But there are certain deficiencies in the way they're approaching their students, and the results actually speak for themselves.
Sure. I mean, the thing is, I think there is a systematic problem with the prep school because a lot of students from a lot of universities, they fail at the end of the prep school year because, students attend prep classes for 2 semesters, for 2 terms, and at the end of the second term, they take the English proficiency test, and if they pass their proficiency test, that means they can start their department, they can start taking graduate or undergraduate courses depending on their program. But in most cases, students fail at the end of the second semester, and when they fail, they need to take another exam, mostly in July or August.
Yeah.
If they fail that exam, they take another one, most probably in September. And if they fail that exam, that means they've just lost a full year because if they're not able to pass the proficiency test in September, that means they cannot start their department, they cannot start taking classes. In those cases, they're called remedial students. Boğaziçi University calls them remedial students. So these students have to wait for the next proficiency exam, which is generally around the start of the new year, January or February. I guess this is the case for most schools, and that means students lose valuable time. And this is a very common problem.
Yeah.
More common than most people know or imagine.
Yeah. As they keep failing these exams and as they keep losing time, actually the country loses time.
Sure.
Because all of these people, we're talking about people who were able to pass the university entrance exam with flying colors and rank among the top maybe 1,000 or a few thousands of students in the entire country. So it's like among the 1.5 million students, these guys came in the top 100, in the top 1,000, at the lowest end, I guess it's 10,000. So this is the minimum requirement for entering Boğaziçi University. And these guys are having an important problem, unfortunately. When they come in, they can't start their classes, they can't start doing the actual thing that they signed up for because there's a problem, there's an impediment, and English is the name, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's not the language's fault, but unfortunately the experience of prep school, that's the topic of our podcast. The experience is not great.
Sure. Canberk is referring to the context of Boğaziçi, but in my experience, I'll go further and expand the scene a lot further because, as I said, I've had students from probably all universities in Istanbul. I mean, most of the major universities. And this is like the prep school is a common problem for most major universities. And unfortunately, there are, as I said, systemic problems, and these problems seem to linger, like they're not being addressed. Yeah. So there are a couple problems that I'm not happy with, and the first one, I think, is the fact that students are not really informed about the difficulty of the exam and the expectations they're expected to meet by the end of the year. So a lot of students, like these are high school students, they graduate from high school and take the university entrance exam, and then they start university. So they're expected to, I mean, in most cases, they go to programs that are taught in English, and they're expected to have a high level of academic English. But the classes that they take in prep school generally are not on par with the classes or the expectations that they need to meet by the end of the year. Like
to pass the exam.
Yeah, the English proficiency test is a lot harder, a lot more difficult than the material that they cover during the year, during the semesters. So that's one major problem. A lot of students are surprised at the end of the year that they have to pass that exam. And I think it's the fault of the universities, and it's also the fault of students. Like, if you're going to take an important exam at the end of the year, if you know this, you have to make sure that you check out that exam months in advance, or the institution should make sure that students are knowledgeable about the exam. Because if you as a student take the exam maybe at the start of the year, if you know that if you understand that it's very difficult, if you understand the expectations, if you see that you fail and you need to work hard, then you can plan accordingly.
Yeah.
And in most cases, this is the major problem. Students are not really knowledgeable about the exam that they're going to take, and the institutions in most cases do not really present the exam to students so that they can make the necessary arrangements. I think that's one major problem. And another major problem is the mismatch between the curriculum and the exam. So, I mean, I hear from students that they keep playing games for the whole year. Like, maybe they have classes for half day, like not full day classes. They have half day classes, and then like half of the half day class goes to like sometimes silly games, sometimes like games with no purpose. I mean, they're great for passing time, they're great to have fun, but they're not necessarily the best way to learn. Because, you know, if you're learning academic English, that means extensive study. It's not like learning the names of objects.
Yeah.
It requires extensive reading, thinking, and a lot of effort. And like playing games all year won't really help. I mean, it will to a certain degree, but
for entertainment purposes.
Yeah, but it won't be enough to help you pass the exam. Like, you cannot expect to play your way out of the exam, really.
Yeah.
So that's a major problem as well. And these really bother me because, like, I see a lot of students suffering from these problems when I talk to them. Like, they understand the problem once they fail, like in hindsight.
A little too late.
Yeah, a little too late. And that's very disturbing. Like, I was having this conversation a couple days ago with a student of mine who took the exam yesterday. And I was like, oh, God, I wish she had more time to go over all of these materials.
Yeah. So we have to define the problem and kind of look at it from a different perspective as well, I guess, because the prep school is really taking on too much.
Yeah.
It's really trying to do something that it is not capable of. All of these guys, some of them have never attended a single hour of English class, unfortunately, because some of our high schools do not offer English classes. That's a reality. And the ones that do, unfortunately, don't do a great job.
Yeah, they do it in a very limited capacity.
Very limited, very hampered capacity. And also, another problem is they don't prepare students for every skill of English. Maybe they get to a certain level in reading comprehension, but that's not enough to pass most of the proficiency exams at universities. That's definitely not enough for Boğaziçi. It's not enough for Istanbul universities. Many of them feature listening and writing skills as well. And these are almost never practiced at high school, at the high school level. So the prep school is really trying to do too much, maybe. That's another problem with the concept of prep school.
I think there's another major issue here. A lot of prep schools do not teach students how to study. They simply assume that students know how to study. They assume that students know how to learn new words. They assume that students know how to write an essay. It's like pushing someone into the ocean and expecting them to swim.
Yeah.
And that's not really the best way to teach someone to swim.
Yeah, really. Even a skilled swimmer is going to be having a hard time at the ocean.
Sure. So, learning English is like diving into an ocean. And if you're unprepared, you will have a very difficult time. Yeah. And as I said, a lot of students do not know how to study. So they try to memorize lists of words, like the Turkish translation and the English word. They do not learn the pronunciation of those words.
Yeah.
Like they learn maybe tens of words, but when they hear them, they don't understand those words because they do not pay attention to their pronunciation. Or maybe they know hundreds of words, but when they're expected to speak, they mispronounce those words because they don't learn the pronunciation of those words when they're learning those words in the very beginning.
It's about the effectiveness of the English teaching.
Sure. Yeah. Or the consciousness of students as well. Like if students knew how to learn new words, they would do a better job. Or students, as I said, simply learn the Turkish translation of a word, but they don't learn how to use that word in a sentence. They don't learn if that word has dependencies, for example, prepositions before or after it, or if that word is a verb or a noun, or if there are different forms of that word, or if there are any similar or related words and so on. So students do not really know much about learning new things, like especially when it comes to English, or they don't really know how to improve their writing skills. For example, I met several students who said they made no progress in writing, and I was talking to them. Like one of them said, "Oh God, I wrote like 10 essays and stuff, but I failed again." I was like, interesting. So you wrote 10 essays, but did you have them checked? No.
Yeah.
I haven't. Okay, then how do you expect to improve? Like if you're making mistakes, writing 10 more essays will simply make those mistakes stronger.
Yeah, and actually it does. Some students, without purposeful study, some students enter the exam and they got a certain degree, and then they study aimlessly for a few months and they take the exam again, and their score is actually lower now.
Sure.
A lot of the times we see that.
And students are surprised, but like as an experienced teacher, there is nothing surprising here. Like if you don't get proper feedback, you simply continue to make the same mistakes. Like if you don't change the way you handle things, you cannot expect different results. For example, here, like when we are having writing classes, we give students extensive feedback, either written or oral feedback, to help them really understand their mistakes and the underlying causes and how to improve those sentences that were marked wrong. So that really helps. But a lot of students do not know how to practice their writing, do not know how to get feedback, do not know how to use that feedback. Secondly, reading. Like reading is a major skill, but a lot of students do not really have a certain plan to tackle reading. For example, I see students asking, well, I'm going to take the proficiency test. Should I read novels or newspapers or what? So in that case, if you're taking an academic English test, you have to read materials that resemble or that represent that exam. So like maybe reading novels or reading newspapers might not be the best way. If you're able to find academic articles, if you're able to find reading texts that resemble your exam, then that's your best bet, right?
Sure.
Because there will be a resemblance. Or when it comes to listening, a lot of students think that if they simply read the subtitles, they will get better at listening. But reading subtitles only improves your speed reading skills. It's not about your ears, because if there are subtitles, your ears simply shut down. If you want to improve your listening, you have to focus your full attention on your ears, on your eyes. Like, there are tips and tricks that can really help students improve their basic skills, like reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills. But most students are not really guided. Like, they don't know these rules. I mean, there are a lot of tried and tested rules. There is no need to invent the wheel all over again. But I see a lot of students making the same mistakes each and every year. And to me, that's kind of heartbreaking.
That's
like,
really sad.
Yeah, as I said, I was working with some prep students who failed the exam in May and June. And they were taking the exam again this month. And while I was talking to them, I realized that, like, after a full year, they lacked some very basic words. And that's very disheartening. I was like, I mean, you've been to prep school for like 2 semesters, and you still don't know the meaning of this very essential, very common word. And it's a pity. And I'm like, okay, who is guilty here? Like, is it the prep school? Is it the student? I mean, I guess both parties share the guilt to a certain degree. But yeah, I'm a little disturbed by all this.
Yeah, you know, I think this leads us to maybe the most important aspect of what is wrong with the prep school. And I think the answer is the prep school doesn't guide, right? Doesn't offer enough guidance.
I think that's a major problem.
Yeah. For example, you mentioned 2 major problems at the beginning of the talk. You said there's mismatch between the content that's offered during the course, during the classes, and the actual exam. And the bigger issue was that the students weren't aware of the difficulty level of what is expected of them in the exam during the classes. And these are interrelated. And these are 2 major issues, and the common denominator between them is that they're about guidance or lack thereof. They're about lack of guidance. The prep school doesn't offer enough, doesn't instill enough awareness in the students so that they can prepare themselves. Like, the prep school has to prepare students, right? And also has to equip the students with the knowledge and skills that they can use to prepare themselves, because the prep school can't prepare students by itself. The students have to prepare themselves as well. And at the same time, I think tied to this is another issue that you've just mentioned. The prep school should not be conceptualized in a way that it only pertains to English. I think it has to be much broader than this. Because why do you teach these guys English? To prepare them for their academic studies, right? Why do you want to give them academic studies in the first place? To prepare them for the workforce and to allow them to become the best version of themselves, allow them self-expression skills so that they can go out and achieve productivity, success, and creativity. They can do a lot of things that benefit society and themselves. And, you know, you have to put 2 and 2 together, right? That's really important. The prep school needs to teach all of those skills that you mentioned during the year. I think they need to be sprinkled all over their curriculum. You know, how to write an essay, how to prepare homework, like basic homework, how to prepare homework, how to study,
how to make a presentation,
like how to learn. First of all, that's really, really big.
That really matters.
Having the self-regulation skills to understand when your learning methods are not working, and understand what to make of it, how to intervene and make necessary changes, how to adapt. All of these things need to be taught, and they can be, but we're just giving them half-day classes and then sending them to like table tennis and like movies and stuff like that, and the beach and everything. That's not good.
Yeah, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Like another major problem is the fact that students and parents believe that by simply attending to prep classes, they'll be able to pass the exam. But that simply is not true. You might attend all the prep classes, you might complete all the assignments, and you might still fail.
Yeah.
Because what you learn at school is generally not enough to pass the exam. This is a lot like taking the university entrance exam. We all go to high school, we have exams at high school, we go to classes at high school, but in order to achieve a good grade in the university admission test, we do a lot of extra work, like hundreds of hours of extra work. So we know that high school would not be enough. So that's the same with the prep school. Like simply going to classes in your prep school is not enough. You have to do a lot of study on your own. Like you have to study for hours on your own. Like if your classes end at school, that should not mean that your learning should end as well.
That's
See,
right. Exactly.
A lot of students end their learning after the classes end, and that's a major mistake. That's a major problem. So, like, if you're attending prep school, you should make sure that you at least study as much as you do in the prep school, because if you don't allocate enough time to your study, if you don't allocate enough time to planning, like, you will not be able to learn all the words, you will not be able to develop all the skills you need to pass your exam. Besides, another issue, I mean, I think I am very much into this problem. Like, since I work with a lot of prep students, like, I empathize with them. Like, when they fail, I get really sad, like, the problems, because I get to experience their problems firsthand, and it's really heartbreaking, like, but then it's also exhilarating to see them pass their exams, like, after a couple months of hard work. And I'm like, sometimes, like, a student fails and then comes to our office, and then we work for a couple months, and then the student passes his or her exam, and the family is kind of surprised, like, how did it happen? Like the student attended prep school for a year, he or she failed, but then takes a couple months of extra classes and then passes the exam. I'm also surprised, but I know that we're doing something right. It's first and foremost about really instilling the right mindset. Like, I tell students that it's their responsibility. I tell them, as a coach, as a guide, as a teacher, I'll give you all the help you need. But you are a football player. If you do not go onto the pitch, if you do not run, if you do not work hard, like, you'll fail, even if I am the best coach in the world. Like, you have to do the work. There is no shortcut. Like, you have to do the work.
Yeah.
And I teach them how to learn, basically, like how to improve their writing skills, how to improve their listening skills, how to improve their reading and speaking skills. It's basically about teaching the mindset and the tools and the methods, and giving them responsibility and checking in with them, like providing feedback loops. And if you do that, you will not believe the progress that you make, or you're able to make.
Definitely.
And it's impressive, and therefore I think prep school should also be about instilling the right mindset. It shouldn't be really aimlessly going to classes. Like, students should know what they're learning, or what they will learn, and why they're learning something, or why something matters for them. Because if they know that something matters for a purpose, that something has a purpose, the learning process becomes a lot more meaningful.
Yeah. And also, finally, I think, at least on my part, the prep school is a point in time when students are experiencing a lot of highs, a lot of new psychological states. They're out of high school, and for most of the students, that means being out of the house, like being away from your own city or hometown, your mother and father.
It's it's a period of major transformation.
Exactly. So, and they have been successful at the university entrance exam, which is a really big thing in Turkey.
It's no small task.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's no mean feat. First of all, it's really difficult to do. So congrats on all of the guys who passed this year. And at the same time, I think there's also a huge stigma, I don't know if you would call that, around the entire exam. The exam is one of the most successful examples of its kind in the world. I mean, relatively speaking, there have been huge issues, but relatively speaking, it's really good. But at the same time, despite all of the institutionalization, the exam itself is seen as if the person who passes the exam has saved their lives. Like they're ready to do anything and they can. It's a huge fallacy. And unfortunately, you realize it after a few years pass by and you realize that you haven't been receiving the knowledge, the skills. You haven't been developing anything to prepare for the work life and the business life. That's a huge problem, unfortunately. And the prep school aggravates this problem.
Sure, it does.
Because in the prep school, everybody's like cheerful, and the teacher is like, "Oh my God!" Like these
until you fail.
Yeah, until you fail. That's huge. That's like a crash and burn situation.
Yeah,
that's a problem. You know, the psychological aspect of the psychological management skills that these teachers and managers, organizers, curriculum developers have to have are tremendous, and they don't have them.
Yeah, the thing is, as you rightly mentioned, the university entrance exam is really difficult for a lot of students. We've been there, done that, and I know how it feels. So it's really difficult. You work a lot for maybe a year, for a couple years, and when you pass the university admission test, you feel a different sense of pride and purpose in life.
Exactly.
And you feel that you're free.
Definitely.
You're ready to go. You've
made it.
You've made it.
Yeah.
And then for a lot of students, prep school is also, as I said, a time of transformation. And some students consider it a time to recuperate from the last year's losses, make friends, socialize, and have some break time, basically.
Just while off.
Have some rest. But then
reality sinks in.
Yeah, right? The reality sinks in. The thing is, if you spend the prep year relaxing and chilling and hanging out with friends, then at the end of the year you'll face the harsh reality. I mean, if your English is great, then that's not an issue. You'll pass the exam eventually. But if your English isn't that great, and if you spend the whole year chilling with friends, then there is a harsh winter coming.
Guess what? There's another problem now. If the reason why you failed is because you didn't work hard and you didn't work well enough, I mean, you didn't study, that's what I mean. You didn't study hard enough or well enough, then even when you pass the exam after maybe another additional year of study or maybe half a year of study, you're going to have a lot of difficulties with your actual departmental courses as well. Because you didn't develop the necessary skills.
That's a great point, and I was planning to make it.
Yeah.
Congrats to you.
So, it's like both ends of the spectrum, in terms of both ends, there's a problem here.
Sure.
You need to really be working hard. You need to be studying hard at the prep school. The prep school has to ensure that these guys are not losing their days, they're not wasting all of their spare time. Think about what we would have been able to do with all of that spare time now. We're scavenging for spare time right now.
That would be incredible.
Every single hour matters. We can do so much with every single hour.
And business life.
Definitely.
You don't realize it when you're in college.
Exactly. Especially prep school. Oh my God.
I've got the full year.
Yeah. I have the entire day off, nothing to do, 3 hours of class.
I can sleep late.
That's terrible stuff, man.
Sure.
It really, all of the muscles that you've developed studying for the university entrance exam, they atrophy.
Yeah.
You're back to square one. that's a problem.
Sure. Well, you're definitely right in saying that the prep school is not a great stepping stone to your major, because I experience this problem a lot with students, especially in social sciences. For example, in order to pass the proficiency test, you have to generally score 60 or higher on a scale of 100. Yeah, out of 100, you have to score at least 60 to pass the exam. But 60 is not that great. Like, it's not a really high standard. It's not a really high bar. Really so not. It's like, for example, you're going to study psychology or maybe arts, and you got 60 in the proficiency test, but then when your classes start, when your real classes start, when you start taking departmental courses, when you start reading art history or advanced studies in psychology, you're lost. You Definitely. Don't understand the articles. You're not able to follow the train of thought. You're not able to write response article. You're not able to make presentations and so on. So
Definitely.
that really stinks.
Exactly. That's such a huge problem.
Yeah, that's such a huge problem. And sometimes students then fail their classes, like their departmental classes. Like if their English is not good enough, they either get very low grades or they fail some of their classes. Yeah. Maybe after the first year, like after their first year, they start sort of getting used to their English, like departmental English, and they start improving their grades and so on. But the first year is really problematic in that sense.
That's right. That's a huge point, I think. And it happens to almost everybody. They get all of these low grades undeservingly. Like I've even heard, like even during our, undergraduate years, I was hearing this from my friends from other departments who had nothing to do with English during the high school. And they come in and they start as a beginner at the prep school and they struggle, they grapple with all of these English problems.
It's a trauma, right?
Yeah. And then after that, and they pass the exam and they think, oh God, thank goodness that was over. And then they go into a psychology class, they go into an international relations class, like any social class, any humanities class. And then they have to sit in silence and just look at this guy next to them speak for the rest of the class, and they express opinions and ideas that are not really worth anything, but they're able to do that just because they have the speaking skills to do that. And they get good grades in the exam just because they have writing skills to do that. And this guy just sits there, the head full of ideas and frustration, and they can't get it out. And that's a huge loss for the country.
It is, but then you have to know what might happen, and you have to take measures. You have to prepare yourself.
That's the reason why we're talking.
Yeah, you have to take the measures to prepare yourself for the battlefield.
That's right.
It's a battlefield.
It is.
You have to prepare yourself. Like, you might lose a few battles, but you have to win the war.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, these are some of the issues that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And I've been thinking a lot about these because it's that time of the year. Yeah. Like, students fail and they keep calling me, okay, can I come in? Can we work together? Like, and it's really sad because like there are only so many students I can help.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's kind of heartbreaking. And yeah, I've been trying to record YouTube tutorials, especially regarding the main skills development, like how to improve your reading skills, how to improve your writing skills, how to improve your speaking and listening skills. And I've added a lot of YouTube courses on my channel to help students improve their reading skills by going over academic articles and writing sample essays and so on.
Spot on, yeah.
Yeah. Those courses so far have helped millions of students, and I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to share these experiences, like the problems, the shortfalls and stuff, so that we can learn, we can take lessons from the past mistakes. And unfortunately, I see these mistakes being repeated over and over each and every year. And as I said, it's very it's very disturbing, and I hope this episode will at least help some students and some parents to make better decisions, to see the future better, like to prepare themselves better for the battles ahead of them.
Yeah.
I mean, you might not call them battles, but of course there will be issues, there will be problems, and you have to be well equipped to tackle them.
Yeah, there are challenges for sure, even if not battles. So for the remedial students out there, for those struggling at the prep school, we understand you. We appreciate you. Yeah,
we hear you.
You know, we hope you can pull through. We're rooting for you. So that's pretty much it.
I mean, the thing is, I know for sure that given enough effort and enough guidance, each and every student can pass. Because, you know,
totally.
Well, we had a student, Ahmet. Okay, I'll name a name.
Throw out a name. Yeah.
Okay, like I had a student like who failed the Boğaziçi prep class for like 2 or 3 years in a row. Like he had some health issues, like he did not really attend the classes and so on. And when we started classes, he was in a horrible state, like English-wise. Like he couldn't write a basic paragraph in an hour, and when he brought me his paragraph, it was like full of mistakes. There was no single proper sentence. That was how we got started. And I was like, oh my goodness, how are we going to do this? It was very difficult. Like it took I think it took about a year. Like for some of that time he was abroad, we sent him to England to prepare for IELTS. And then he came back. We continued our classes, sometimes over the internet, sometimes in-house. And eventually he made it. Yeah. Despite all the odds being against him, he made it. And I'm real proud of him.
Definitely.
Ahmet, you're an inspiration for the generations to come. Like, you were in a very terrible shape when we got started. But you made it, and I think your story should serve as an inspiration for a lot of other students. Like, I think most students are, like, even if they failed, they're in a better shape than Ahmet. So if he made it, I think you can make it. Ahmet, you're helping a lot of students, so pardon us. Okay, well, guys, that's it for now, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye-bye.